Good morning, everybody. The title of my talk this morning is Crossing Over. And Kate, can you show us the picture? As we enter the Zendo here, immediately to our left, hanging on the wall, is this, written in Japanese, in kanji. And the English pronunciation of this is Rin Taku Ji, translated in English as Forest Crossing Over Temple. This is the Japanese expression in writing of our name, Bodhioka. Thank you, Kate. In Zen, crossing over to the other shore is usually the rest of that phrase. Of course, relates to our path of practice in Zen, which leads to transforming our confusion, our pain, our suffering, that we experience on one side, on one shore, and transforming it into greater clarity, greater ease, you could say greater peacefulness. And it's a metaphor for a practice. And it's actually expressed in the word paramita, meaning arriving at the other shore, or arriving at wisdom, arriving at awakening. But Master Dogen Zenji wrote brilliantly about this in a very small paragraph, and he said, although the other shore does not have the appearance or trace from olden times, arriving is actualized. Arriving is the fundamental point. Do not think that practice leads to the other shore. Because there is practice on the other shore, when you practice, the shore arrives. It is because this practice embodies the capacity to actualize all realms. This is really a lovely thing he says here. Do not think that practice leads to the other shore. Because there is practice on the other shore, when you practice, the other shore arrives. One of the earliest stories about crossing over to the other shore, one of many of which of you have probably heard a number of times, goes like this. A man is trapped on one side of a very fast-flowing river, and there's great danger and uncertainty where he stands. And on the far side of the river, there's safety. But there's no bridge, there's no ferry for crossing. So the man gathers logs and leaves and twigs and vines and is able to fashion a kind of raft, sturdy enough to carry him to the other shore. By lying on the raft and using his arms to paddle, he crosses the river to safety. Buddha then asks the listeners of this story a question. What would you think if the man, having crossed over the river, then said to himself, oh, this raft has served me so well, I should strap it on my back and carry it over land now? The monks replied that it would not be very sensible to cling to the raft in such a way. And the Buddha continued, well, what if he lay the raft down gratefully, thinking that this raft has served him well, but is no longer of use and can thus be laid down upon the shore? And the monks replied that this would be the proper attitude. And the Buddha concluded by saying, and so it is with my teachings, which are like a raft and for crossing over with, not for seizing hold of. So this story is usually thought of as a lesson about letting go of our attachments. Even the letting go of the Buddhist teachings and practices about non-attachment. Letting go of those too. Letting go of it all. But it's also of interest and importance, I think, to take a look at the other aspects of this story. The building of the raft and the fast-flowing, maybe even at times raging river. Our practice of Zazen encourages us to examine what is on one shore, and conversely, what it is we long for or imagine is on the other shore. In Zazen, we're given this unique opportunity, which teaches us really breath by breath to just be here on this shore for a while and just examine our minds. We're encouraged not to run away, not to run off, but rather to stay a bit. And so then, what is on this shore? If we look at the story I just shared, this shore is filled with danger and uncertainty. But what exactly is so dangerous? Maybe danger is meaningful, just as an expression of struggles. We face so many. A handful, for instance, loneliness, relationship challenges, illness, aging. You can name many. I think it's so easy to think that the other shore is the opposite of all that, offering relief from the myriad conditions that can confuse and maybe cause us pain and uncertainty. Perhaps we think of the other shore as an awakening and enlightenment in which all of this doesn't exist anymore. All these conditions have been resolved and they simply go away. But you know this thinking would be a mistake. Actually, the other shore is quite simply this shore, which we experience in every breath, right here and now, but clarified through our practice. And referring back to the Buddha's teaching in the story, what we can do to clarify is to make a raft of our lives. Just like the man in this story who gathers logs and leaves and twigs and vines, we gather up our experiences, the causes and the conditions that we might rather want to get rid of, for example, experiences in relationships or with our communities or in nature or in politics, all of it. And we simply just bind that all together with the twine of practice, an expression I got from Deborah Dago. It's a specific kind of binding that brings very open attention, compassion, loving kindness, and insight into the true nature of beings. And the true nature of things is symbolized by the ever-flowing, constantly moving and changing river. And so by gathering up all the stuff of our lives, sort of binding it all together with the forms of our practice. So in other words, zazen and bowing and chanting and all the other rituals and forms we have in Zen. By gathering up all the stuff of our lives and binding it together with the form of practice, we do eventually reach the other shore. And curiously enough, it does in fact look a lot like this shore. There's the same garden, the same kitchen, the same friends, the same jeeps. Yet something is discernibly different. When we can arrive fully into our own lives, we experience a quality that, as the Buddha has taught, was always there, always within us. But now, we're able to see it more clearly. And as you know, the Buddha calls this simply things as they are. We notice that becoming things as they are There is no fast-flowing river, no raft, no one building and guiding the raft. Just this. Now, as you all know, I just returned from a trip to Hawaii to support my sister, who did a really good job of badly breaking her ankle. And I was staying with her and her husband. And the idea of crossing over as a topic for a talk originated there, because there is a bridge from the second story of their main house where they live and over to, actually it's a large garage area and a shop, and also there's like a little cottage there, a little condo we call it, where I stayed, which is on the same level as the second story. And the bridge spans over, up above the yard below. And the story of this bridge actually is interesting because one day a few years ago, my sister's husband, he owns a construction company and he's a master carpenter. So he decided he was going to build a walkway from the main house extending over the yard as an alternative to going up and down the stairs of their house from the second down to the first floor, or from climbing the road to get up to the garage and the shop, which is on the other side. And when he told my sister about this, she was really upset. She hated the idea. She thought it was horrible. And mainly because she saw that she has this large kitchen window. And that's her view of the beautiful space that they live in outside. And this was going to cover it with a little roof and take the sun out, take the sun away, and all these other problems that she saw with this. And my sister views the world through an artist's aesthetic. And Mike, again, is a contractor. So he's just a can-do guy, can build anything. And so anyway, work began, and it ended up being a kind of covered bridge. Not a kind of covered bridge, it is a covered bridge. And not just this little small walkway, which was the original thought, but it's quite a good size coming off of that second story. But pretty quickly, this bridge became the center of gatherings for all their friends and family. So whenever they talk about getting together, it's always, hey, come on over to the bridge. Everything happens on the bridge. Everyone is brought to the bridge, whether it's a celebratory barbecue or a serious family discussion. Everything's welcome. And this bridge, of course, leads to the other side. But just as with the Buddha story, the other side is of course, no different. But the bridge has somehow provided the necessary space to gather up the logs and the leaves and the twigs of our lives, their lives, to bind them together with love and attention so that growing can happen, loving kindness can happen. So this bridge was symbolic in my mind too, because I've been feeling really isolated from my family, even though I visited them twice now in 6 months. And in the cottage where I stay there, that condo, the bridge connects me directly with them. And I must say it's been also a blessing, especially now for my sister as she recovers. There are no stairs for her to try to maneuver, and for my knee. But I too, as in this story, was reminded the bridge always exists, whether I'm there or not, whether I'm there or here. And the experiences and conditions of my life, as it specifically relates to my family in Hawaii, are always a part of my practice. Feeling the distance, the inability to be part of the events as well as the everyday happenings of their lives. But through my practice with what we know is this loving attention and kindness and insight, just as Dogen said, the other shore arrives. To be true, Zazen doesn't disappear my desire to be near my family in Hawaii. But it does provide the form which allows me to examine my own experiences in relation to this desire and really appreciate all that I feel about it. So to put together this talk today, I had a number of images serving as metaphors. I was seeing our name in kanji, forest crossing over temple, the bridge at my sister's house, and this early Buddhist story of crossing over to the other shore, along with the raft and the raft captain and the raging river. And now, can we use these in our practice, drawing upon this story? Yes. And firstly, we practice here on this shore, or I might say at the foot of the bridge. And we resist the tendency to move or to get up, and we just sit zazen, examining our mind and our relationship to everything on this shore. Then, we can put together the raft of our life, all of the wanted and unwanted conditions, our flaws, our gifts, all the sentient beings that we meet, all the elements of life, and we bind them all together with our practice. We experience them through the lens of practice. And third, maybe we become this river, seeing and experiencing the flow, sometimes raging, and we're sort of tossing and turning through the waters, sometimes just meandering along. This river of all conditioned things. And lastly and importantly, in Zen, we commit to making a raft for others, to practice, to see into the true nature of all things is to see and acknowledge the human condition, of which we obviously are all a part. And through our seeing, really seeing, raft building naturally emerges from our compassionate and ever clarifying heart of connectedness. Rivers and bridges can connect, but they can also divide. And it's up to us, supported by our deep commitment to this practice, our sincere attention to the teachings, and to our inseparable connection to Sangha and all beings, to manifest our wholehearted effort to experience the true nature of things.